My sister-in-law poisons my food, which her husband ends up eating. She ends up divorced and in jail. I, at 29 years old, have been married to my husband Harry for the last 7 years. I love everything about our marriage except the fact that he is related to his sister Kayla, who brings all the negativity into our lives. She is incredibly negative, manipulative, and toxic. I have worked hard for years to avoid crossing her path because I know what kind of person she is. In the past, my husband had dated my sister-in-law's best friend when he was 17, and later they broke up because he felt pressured to be with her by my sister-in-law. When he turned 23 and found himself single, his sister insisted that he and her friend should be together, but he refused. They had a big fight, and she went crying to their parents about how she wanted him to marry someone she felt comfortable with, but their parents really didn't listen to her. When my husband and I met and fell in love, his parents were very understanding. My sister-in-law always treated me coldly whenever she was around. She would always bring up Harry's ex-girlfriends for no reason and tell him how well they were doing and how he should get back in touch with them. This continued for a while, and it wasn't just me who found this strange, as Harry also found it strange. So he asked her not to continuously mention his ex-girlfriends. My sister-in-law would get angry and start mocking me, saying I was getting jealous and that he shouldn't be with an insecure person like me. When his parents invited us to dinner, my sister-in-law would intentionally bring one of Harry's ex-girlfriends, telling us how she had bumped into them that day by accident and had to invite them to dinner out of courtesy. She also endlessly checks my Instagram, even though she doesn't follow me. I have a public account, so I've noticed how she is the first person to view my story. If a guy comments on my photo, she then goes to her brother and complains about how I was posting inappropriate photos. Harry and I literally laughed at her accusations. When Harry and I decided to move in together, she urged Harry to break up with me, telling him that I had many flaws as a woman and that she could find someone much better for him. This comment honestly hurt me, as I had been nothing but kind to her at all times. Unfortunately, as soon as Harry and I got engaged, my sister-in-law's behavior towards me worsened even more. When Harry and I announced our engagement, everyone started congratulating us. I noticed Kayla was very quiet, and then she got up from the chair and walked out of our party, to everyone's surprise. Later, she called Harry crying and screaming about how she didn't appreciate being told the news with everyone else, as she thought he was the closest to her, so she deserved to be the first to know about his engagement. Then she sent me a message, which almost bordered on threatening, saying how I should be a good wife to her brother since she had always been the only woman in his life. The message was so weird it almost made me cringe. I didn't even bother responding to her and left her message on read, which I know must have made her even angrier. My sister-in-law gradually started ignoring me every time she saw me, but for some reason, she remained involved in all the wedding activities. When I went dress shopping and had my bachelorette party, she took her wedding criticism to a whole new level, openly expressing her discontent with my choices. Despite my future mother-in-law and my fiancé pointing out her behavior several times, her behavior persisted. One day, while discussing the centerpiece with my future mother-in-law, Kayla overheard and immediately started mocking me, saying how my wedding had no class and how that was why she wanted her brother to marry someone better. That was the breaking point for me, and I lost my composure. I yelled at her that I couldn't tolerate her constant mockery and criticism any longer and made it clear she was not invited to our wedding. Kayla was shocked, incredulous, as if she had never expected me to stand up to her. Even my mother-in-law was furious with her and supported me. Later, Kayla approached Harry, complaining about how I had embarrassed her and insisting that he needed to control me since I was going to be his wife. Harry firmly told her that he supported my decision and that if she didn't apologize, she wouldn't be invited to the wedding. Reluctantly, she sent me a sincere apology, which I saw and again left unread. With the wedding preparations, I was already exhausted and didn't want to get involved in her drama. In the end, she ended up coming to our wedding because she didn't want to be spoken of badly afterward. Now, my wedding had a certain theme of pink and pastel tones which everyone seemed to follow without any problems, including the guests. However, my sister-in-law showed up wearing a long floor-length black dress with a veil, as if she were coming to a funeral. We were shocked, to say the least. My sister-in-law was going around telling people she was mourning the loss of her brother to another woman. During the reception, my husband could see how uncomfortable I felt with my sister-in-law's wedding outfit and confronted her about it. She tried to play the victim, saying she had the right to dress however she wanted and that I was being too controlling. In the end, my mother-in-law and father-in-law asked her to leave when she wouldn't stop causing a scene. It was humiliating for me, and from that day on, I avoided crossing paths with her. When I gave birth to my son Nate, I refused to let my sister-in-law be near our baby. She tried to argue about it, but my husband and his parents supported me. They understood exactly why I didn't want my sister-in-law near my baby and respected my decision. 2 years ago, my sister-in-law had a miscarriage with her then-boyfriend Jamie, and it completely devastated her. It was a really sad time for everyone. Harry and I felt bad for her as we already had a child, so after her miscarriage, we decided to be a bit more understanding. We invited her to our house so she could bond with our son Nate. I must say, she has been surprisingly sweet to our son, despite how she behaves with me. At first, she seemed to have changed, but over time, she went back to being her old self. She is always talking about how difficult her life is, how things never seem to work out for her, blaming ex-boyfriends or ex-friends for ruining things in her life. Over time, I've noticed that in her mind, she never makes mistakes. She rarely admits any fault in conflicts and constantly tries to get people on her side by playing the victim card. This year, she decided to get married and invited everyone except us. Harry was shocked to find out we weren't invited. When we asked her about it, she started saying how she couldn't allow me to come because I might do something to overshadow her wedding. I called her and asked why she would think such a thing when I had never done anything to her. Kayla began to say how she had decided to dress all in black at our wedding, so now she feared I would do the same, and that's why she didn't want me at her wedding. I was furious at how manipulative she was and told my husband clearly. Harry talked to his parents, and they decided to tell my sister-in-law that they wouldn't pay for the wedding or attend it. This reduced my sister-in-law to tears, and she started blaming me for creating this mess. My husband informed her that she had blatantly admitted her own mistake, so she had no right to point fingers at me. But Kayla justified her action, saying our wedding had been a long time ago and I should get over it. Later, as my father-in-law and mother-in-law still refused to pay for her wedding, she approached me to apologize and begged for forgiveness. I hate to admit it, but Kayla can be very sweet and persuasive when she wants something. I forgave her and just wanted to leave the past behind. Her wedding to Jamie went well. We all attended and had a good time. Not even 6 months later, Kayla was at our doorstep, complaining about how her marriage was falling apart. Harry and I let her stay with us for a few days, where she vented for hours about her husband. She seemed to have trouble getting pregnant, and Kayla clearly blamed Jamie for everything. I tried talking to Kayla, but she was determined that everything was her husband's fault. When she wasn't complaining about her husband, she was hyper-focused on our lives, trying to invent things that didn't exist. For example, I usually go to the gym every morning before work. Sometimes, when I'm running late, I take my work clothes with me so I can finish my workout, shower, and change clothes. My sister-in-law noticed this for some time and asked me many questions about it, like why I was showering or why I even needed to go to the gym. I didn't think much of it and told her how I like to maintain my weight and how I don't like going to the office all sweaty. She pursed her lips and nodded. Eventually, things worked out with Jamie, and she moved back in with him. One weekend, my husband and I went to lunch with my mother-in-law and father-in-law. My sister-in-law and Jamie had also been invited. We left our son Nate with a babysitter, as he usually got bored when US adults talked for hours and wanted to stay home to play. During lunch, my mother-in-law was telling us about how one of her friends was currently divorced. She was telling us how her friend's husband had cheated on her, so she left him and took half of his assets. Suddenly, my sister-in-law interrupted to ask my husband if he and I had signed a prenuptial agreement before getting married. We stopped eating to look at her, and she acted as if I wasn't even there, looking expectantly at my husband. Now, my husband is not someone who beats around the bush, so he said that since we both earned quite well, we saw no reason to sign a prenuptial agreement. My sister-in-law snorted and started saying how there are many cheaters around us these days and he could be deceived at any time. I was offended by her words and asked her to tell us exactly what she was insinuating. My sister-in-law started saying how I was definitely meeting someone else because I always carried a change of clothes everywhere and that. As Harry's sister, it was her duty to warn her brother. I was shocked to hear these words. My father-in-law and my mother-in-law, without missing a beat, continued saying how they were just trying to be there for their brother and joked if our son Nate was really Harry's son, since he didn't look exactly like him. I swear I saw my husband's face turn red with anger. I had never seen him so mad in my life. He stared Kayla straight in the eyes and told her that was why she still wasn't a mother, because she didn't deserve to be one, and that her child would be better off in heaven than with someone like her. Kayla's jaw dropped in shock. My mother-in-law and father-in-law only looked silently at my husband, and then lashed out at Kayla about how she was a shameless person trying to ruin everything because she had nothing good in her life and was just a married loser who did nothing all day while her husband worked hard. They continued saying that instead of pointing fingers at me and asking us about prenuptial agreements, she should worry about her own marriage since she was clearly projecting. Kayla was reduced to tears and started sobbing. She looked at Jamie, who was sitting right beside her, for support, but he didn't say a word. I had never seen my husband lose his temper this way. In the end, he got up from his chair to go to the bathroom. My husband was furious. My mother-in-law came to calm my husband while I rubbed his hand. He told me how sorry he was for what his sister had said about our son, and I nodded because I understood how frustrating she could be. I was quite happy that my husband defended me so publicly, as I had endured enough from Kayla over the years. After he calmed down, he apologized to Jamie but completely ignored Kayla. After lunch that day, we no longer had contact with Kayla. Her behavior was not only affecting me but also my husband. We simply blocked her everywhere so she couldn't contact us. My in-laws talked to us about the lunch and agreed that Kayla had gone too far this time. They could see how their son, who was usually calm, had lost control after Kayla had been provoking him. A year has passed since we talked to her and everything has been going well. 2 months ago, I found out I was pregnant. It was a complete surprise, as we weren't even trying to conceive. My husband and I felt blessed to welcome another member to the family. We waited for the right moment to inform everyone and decided to reveal it on my husband's birthday. The in-laws wanted to celebrate Harry, so they organized a big party for him in their backyard. Our close family and friends were also invited. My sister-in-law must have found out about this from others and decided to show up. My husband and I were surprised to see her, especially when she came and hugged Harry, telling him how much she had missed him and how sorry she was about their last conversation. My husband took my hand and told his sister that she should apologize to me for the things she said last time. My sister-in-law nodded, turned to me, and apologized. She said she had been going to therapy for the past few months and realized how wrong it was to humiliate me that way. I didn't believe a word she said, but I didn't want to be rude to her in front of everyone, so I simply nodded. My in-laws talked to us and said they had no idea she would come, assuring us that if we didn't feel comfortable, they would ask her to leave. However, Harry didn't want to make a scene, so we agreed to let it go. Throughout the party, I could see my sister-in-law laughing and mingling with everyone, which was a bit strange. She seemed overly positive, which was not at all characteristic of her, but she had mentioned going to therapy, so I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. When it was time to cut the cake, Harry gave a heartfelt speech about how he considered himself the luckiest man in the world, grateful for another year with a wife like me. His words made me blush with joy, and I couldn't help but appreciate the fact that my husband and I were still deeply in love, just as we were when we started dating so many years ago. Then, Harry and I decided to share some exciting news with everyone. With smiles on our faces, we announced that we were expecting a baby, and everyone took a moment to process it before exclaiming in happiness. My mother started crying and came to hug me. My in-laws also had tears in their eyes as they congratulated Harry and me. Everyone was so happy for us and excitedly asked if we had already thought of names for the baby. The only discordant note was my sister-in-law, who looked at us stunned. I thought maybe she was taking a moment to process it, but then she changed her expression and simply walked away from us, looking angry. I was a bit worried, thinking if she was going to ruin another celebration for us, but I got distracted by other people coming up to talk to me. When it was time to serve lunch, I saw my sister-in-law approaching me with a smile. She had a plate of food in her hands and handed it to me, announcing loudly that she personally wanted to serve me food because she was so happy about my pregnancy. As she handed me the plate, she even made a comment about how she wanted to make up for all the times she had been rude to me in the past. I nodded and accepted it graciously, and then she walked away. I was about to start eating, but fortunately, I noticed she had put shrimp on my plate. It is a well-known fact in my family that I am allergic to shrimp, so I was surprised that my sister-in-law even served me this. I shook my head in disappointment and got up to get my own food. At that moment, Jamie came over to congratulate me on my pregnancy. We talked a bit, and he asked why I wasn't eating. I pointed out how my sister-in-law had served me shrimp, probably by mistake, so Jamie told me not to worry and took the plate from my hands. He said he could keep that plate since he liked eating shrimp, and that I could get a new plate for myself. I smiled, nodded, and walked away. It wasn't even an hour later when Jamie started to feel sick. Everyone stopped eating, worried, and watched him as he tried to get up from his seat. Harry and Kayla ran to him, concerned. Jamie pointed to his plate and then to his throat. We were shocked when we realized something was clearly wrong with him because of what he had eaten. Kayla ran to check his plate, and her eyes widened. She turned to look at me and asked if I had given my plate to her husband, and I nodded. Amid the chaos, someone called an ambulance, and he was quickly taken to the hospital. Kayla was crying uncontrollably through all this and kept looking at me with anger. Later, we were informed that Jamie had been poisoned. I almost fainted when I heard this, as I knew, unlike the others, that the plate was originally meant for me. The poison that Jamie might have ingested could have poisoned me and my baby. Harry, my in-laws, and my parents still have no idea about this. They called the police to take the food he had eaten as evidence, as no one had any idea what was in the food that caused this reaction. At this moment, as I write this, Jamie is still recovering in the hospital, while Kayla stayed with him overnight. My husband and I have been answering calls from family members asking what happened to Jamie and who could have poisoned him. My in-laws are shocked by what happened and are staying at our house because they are afraid to return to theirs. No one has any idea what happened. Suddenly, when everything was going so well, I am afraid to tell everyone that the plate originally belonged to me and how Kayla came and served it to me. If this turns into an investigation, I will have to tell the truth to the police. I feel extremely guilty about what happened, but most importantly, I am now extremely worried about what my sister-in-law might do to me, as she clearly has no limits. I don't want to be near her, nor can I let my children be near her. Update 1. Wow, thank you for the thousands of comments on this post in just a few hours. I never imagined I would receive so many responses. My hands were trembling when I wrote this earlier, and I haven't been able to sleep. Despite what everyone keeps saying, I feel some responsibility for my brother-in-law's incident. I should have thrown away the plate, but I don't know why I let him take it from me. I keep crying, thinking about what could have happened. My husband knows something is wrong and has been close to me. He thinks I am just worried, but he has no idea what I know about his sister. I agree with the comments that I need to sit down and talk to everyone calmly. I don't know if everyone will believe me, but my in-laws have security cameras installed all over the house, and since this birthday party was happening in their backyard, I am sure they can verify from their cameras that Kayla was the one who offered me that plate. I will talk to everyone tonight and then update. Update 2. So, we talked, and I am very grateful to have the best in-laws in the world. Since they are already staying with us, I sat down with them and Harry during dinner to tell them I had something important to share. I started by taking a deep breath, feeling the weight of the situation on my shoulders. With everyone gathered, I recounted the events of the birthday party, explaining how my sister-in-law served me a plate with shrimp and how Jamie ate it unknowingly, resulting in his poisoning. As I spoke, I could see their faces. My in-laws exchanged glances, their concern evident, while Harry's expression shifted from confusion to anger. I continued to express my fear about my sister-in-law's motives and her previous attempts to harm me. I admitted my hesitation in sharing this information, fearing the possible consequences for me and our unborn child. My mother-in-law, being the pragmatic woman she was, immediately suggested reviewing the security camera footage. My father-in-law nodded in agreement, recognizing the seriousness of the situation. Harry, although visibly upset, remained silent, taking in everything that was happening. After reviewing the security footage from their camera app, the truth was undeniable. The footage showed my sister-in-law offering me the poisoned plate and the subsequent events that led to Jamie's illness. The weight of the evidence left no room for doubt. Harry, now fully aware of his sister's intentions, struggled to contain his anger. My in-laws were horrified by their daughter's actions, shocked by the lengths she had gone to create chaos. We were left stunned in silence as we tried to comprehend why she would do such a thing. In light of this revelation, my in-laws have decided to turn this evidence over to the police, as this is a very serious matter. Later, my father-in-law and my husband will meet with Jamie once he recovers, as he is the one who needs to press charges against my sister-in-law. I have no idea how Jamie will react, and I want to cry every time I think about how I allowed him to eat from my poisoned plate. I can't sleep or eat properly because I am so worried about him. I will update when something significant happens. Update 3. Hello everyone, I am finally back with an update. I know it has been almost a month since my last update, but I am a pregnant woman going through a lot right now. First things first, my in-laws handed over the recording to the police, and after seeing the evidence, she was arrested. Kayla did not even deny the charges, as she immediately broke down crying, admitting everything. My husband spoke to Jamie about what had happened, and Jamie was as shocked as any of us. My husband urged him to press charges against his sister, as this was such a sinister thing to do, and told him that regardless of what he chose to do, he would always be part of our family. In the end, after Jamie recovered, he not only decided to press charges but also filed for divorce. Kayla called my in-laws crying and begging for forgiveness. It turns out that Kayla is pregnant. She begged them to get her out of jail, trying to manipulate them by saying they should do this for the sake of their grandchild. My father-in-law firmly told her that they were done indulging her and that she should learn to take responsibility for her own actions. My mother-in-law is extremely sad about what is happening to her daughter, but she understands that what Kayla did cannot simply be forgiven. The police found evidence that she had tampered with the food with the intent to harm me, which backfired and ended up hurting her husband. She has been charged with multiple offenses related to food tampering, endangering life, and causing harm. She has been begging Jamie not to press charges, saying that it was my fault anyway, but fortunately, Jamie doesn't care, and his mind is set on punishing her. Her court hearing will begin soon. I don't think she can escape this time. Meanwhile, for everyone asking, my child and I are fine. My husband and I have talked and planned to sit down with him and tell him the truth, as we want our son to know and be alert about these situations. I know it will be a difficult but necessary conversation with a little one. I am also going for regular ultrasounds every 2 weeks for my pregnancy, as recommended by my doctor. We don't plan to find out the gender of the baby, as we want it to be a surprise. My parents know what happened with Kayla and have become very protective of me. They are worried that this could affect my psychological well-being during the pregnancy, so they are encouraging me to go to therapy. I agree with them, as despite acting normal, I have developed a deep-seated fear after what Kayla did to my food, and I am afraid to eat any food or something I didn't prepare myself. My husband understands my fear and is there for me every step of the way, so I hope to overcome this irrational fear soon. Update 4. 8 months have passed since my last update. Kayla is currently serving time in prison. She was found guilty of the charges. I never attended her court proceedings, but sometimes my in-laws did, and they told me how Kayla admitted in court that she had felt jealous of me for years because she never wanted a stranger to marry her brother. She had always dreamed that one of her best friends would marry my husband, so when he started dating me, she always tried to intimidate me. When we announced that I was pregnant during my husband's birthday party, she was filled with jealousy, as she was about to announce her own pregnancy too. She had suffered a miscarriage before, so she wanted to share her good news but thought we took away her moment to shine. So according to her, due to her pregnancy hormones, she got so angry that she mixed a small amount of rat poison with my food. She admitted that she only wanted me to end up in the hospital but never wanted to physically harm me or the baby. Of course, the judge did not believe her pleas, and she was sentenced to prison and will be out of our lives for quite some time. Jamie has also successfully divorced her, so he is finally free too. We have seen him over the months and continue to include him in our family activities whenever we can. He and I have talked, and I have apologized profusely for giving him my plate, but he assured me it was never my fault. I started crying when I heard that because I had been replaying it over and over in my head, wishing I had done things differently so he would never have been poisoned. I am glad that Jamie is okay now. As for Harry and me, we have welcomed a baby girl into our family. Despite the lingering shadows of the past, our daughter's presence has brought warmth and light to our lives. Our son Nate is excited to be a big brother and has been showering his little sister with affection and love. Seeing our children bond fills our hearts with gratitude. Throughout all this, my parents and in-laws have been there for us, helping us navigate this new chapter in our lives.